In this lesson, we're going to add a new page to our application, and it's going to be the contact page, a page where somebody can come to get information to reach out if they have some sort of issue or something like that. Ours is going to be really simple. It's just going to have an email address, but the goal of this is to get you familiar with adding new pages to the application and seeing how that all works as we progress through the process of building this web application. So we'll start with something really similar to this handler function, except it's going to have a message about how to get in touch. And then we're going to add a way of registering it so that our application knows to show that page when people visit certain pages or certain paths, and to show the home handler function here. This one that we already have, it's going to show them that one otherwise. And then as we progress through the next couple lessons, we're going to actually start to look at how that routing can sort of happen behind the scenes. We're going to look at how to build some sort of custom routing on our own. And then we're going to explore some routing options that are available to us, including the standard library. And we're also going to look at third-party libraries so you get a feel for how they all work, so that as we progress through the course, we're going to actually use a third-party library to do routing. And I'm going to try to explain why I made that decision and show you how that one works so that you are ready to move forward. So for now, we need to create a handler function. I would suggest making one or doing this by hand, but one other option is to basically just copy this code and then to tweak it from there, because we're going to write something very, very similar to what's there. So we're going to have a func contact handler, and I'm calling this contact handler because handler func is really not descriptive enough. If you think about it, contact handler or handler func, it just sounds like it's our only one, but we're going to have a bunch of handler funcs moving forward. One for the contact page, one for the home page. We might have, different ones. So it doesn't make sense to necessarily just name them handler func. But first, let's write this one, and then we'll go ahead and refactor that one. I have a space where I don't want it. Okay, so we have this function stubbed out. Once you have the function stubbed out and there's no errors in your code, most development tools are going to give you some way to rename variables. So in VS Code, one option is multi-select. So I actually selected the first word and then hit Command D on Mac. I think it's Control D on Windows. You can see it selected both versions of handler func. This has some trade-offs. It's pretty quick and easy to do, but it also is not aware that they're necessarily the same type or whatever that, or function in this case. So if you had one called handler func, another called handler func D, you could technically still try to multi-select if the word you're selecting happens to be a subset of the other word. So for instance, this is multi-func D. You'll see here if I multi-select, it actually selected this, but it didn't select the D. Okay, so another option, you can right-click and then go to rename symbol. And I don't know for sure, but sometimes if you have a bunch of errors in your Go code, this won't work that well. So usually you want to have your Go code in a pretty good state. And then it's probably named something different in Golang, but there's more than likely some way to do this. So if you rename the symbol, we can name this home handler and then hit enter, and you'll see it was updated in both spots. Okay, so that's just a nice handy way of changing it. You can actually do it all manually too if you want. So inside of our contact handler, we need to have a message that tells the user this is the contact page and then gives them a way to get in touch with us. So we could just write func.fprint pass W is the output, and we could do something like h1 contact page, and then we can do a paragraph tag and say to get in touch, email me at, we can do an a tag, then we can do href equals, and I'm going to use a backslash and then a quotation mark, and I'm going to explain that here in a second. So here I'm going to go mail to john@calhoun.io, another backslash and a quotation mark. And then I'm going to say, close this, john@calhoun.io, and I'm going to close that A tag. So this part here actually probably is easier to read if you just open up something new, set the language to HTML. And if you don't know what I'm doing there, that's fine. So what we really want at the end is a string that looks like this. So we want one that says the contact page, and then it says to get in touch, email me at, and then it has a mail to link. The problem is when we are putting HTML like this inside of a string, which we're not going to do long term, this is just sort of a short term thing to get us moving forward, and then we'll start to look at other ways to generate HTML. But because this is all inside of a string, you'll see here that Go uses the quotation mark as a way of telling it this is where the string starts, this is where the string ends. So if we didn't have this backslash, it would actually think the string ends right here, and it doesn't know what this is. It's like gibberish to it. And it's wondering, why did you put, some variable or whatever this is supposed to be right there? And then when this next quotation comes, it thinks the string's starting, and it thinks it ends there. So clearly that's not what we intended. So what we're going to do here is we put this backslash in front of both of these strings, and what we're telling Go is that inside of this string, we want it to actually have the quotation character, and we don't want it to end the string that it thinks it's building or that it is building right now. So that's the big difference there with that part. And we should have this all there. We probably want to add this part too. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste it for now. Again, if you want to type it out, you can. But long term, we're going to try to simplify this so we don't have to write it every time. So it's not as important to write out and get a feel for. So let's go run this. And I'm going to just do go run period, which will run everything in this directory. They put it all together in a Go binary and run it. And I'm not using, you can use mod if you have been. I'm not right now, just to make it a little bit simpler for anybody who doesn't have to happen to be using it. So if I refresh this page, you'll see that it says, welcome to my awesome site. It had the page for a second, but that was because of me recording and then having a bad take. So we need some way to put this contact page in. Now, one simple way is just to replace this handler with the contact handler, and then to stop our server, restart it, and then come back here and make sure it works. And sometimes this is a good way just to make sure our page is working as we expected. And you'll see that it looks to be correct. So now if we go back, I'm going to go ahead and stop the server. And we need some way of using this contact handler. So I'm going to say home handler is what we're using for here. And then we're going to go ahead and register this to the /contact page. So we're going to say http://handlefunc contact, and then we're going to say contact handler. And this will tell our Go code that anything with the path /contact should be sent to this handler. So now if we start up the code, or start up the server, refresh, you'll see that the home page now shows welcome to my awesome site. But if we go to /contact in the URL bar and hit enter, we're now seeing, I'm going to get rid of this because we don't need that. We're now seeing, to get in touch, please email me. So the two pages are working as we expected. So that's it for this lesson. What we're going to start doing now is looking at what is inside of the HTTP request. We're going to start looking at, could we route stuff ourselves if we wanted to, rather than using these handle func where we register a pattern. We're going to actually look at different ways to route the code. And one of those is the serve mux that's being used behind the scenes for handle func. And then we're going to look at third-party libraries so we can actually start routing that way.